Gentleman yields. Mr. Duarte.
Hello, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for joining us here today. Good to have you, and I'm impressed that you're answering the questions directly and not spinning off to assistants on each side of you as sometimes we get. So
Doing my best. Thank
pleased
you.
to have you here. Under the Clean Air Act, the administrator of the EPA sets what are called national ambient air quality standards. My district in California is California 13. It goes down a stretch of the Central Valley from east of San Francisco down towards, but not to the base of the valley at Bakersfield. We have challenging attainment because of geography. We're a bowl with the airflows. We also have challenging attainment because we're at the back end of a venturi of air quality emissions that comes in from the much larger Bay Area metropolitan area and probably makes up historical numbers I've understood. About 28% of our particulate matter is outside of our control. But given that we're the air basin out of attainment, we do everything we can within our basin to correct that, but we have no control over what goes on in the city. So I would ask that you work with the EPA and see if we can get the same attainment standards and compliance standards set for the Bay Area that impacts our air quality as we have to achieve within our basin. Since they're impacting us, we're also a Voting Rights Act, 66% Hispanic, disadvantaged community. As districts go, we've got the 18th highest poverty level in America, and we think we deserve a special consideration, as you've mentioned earlier, for some of those factors. Currently, because we're out of attainment, we filed the reports, we filed our information for waivers, but we're still being threatened with a $4.5 billion loss of highway maintenance fees funds because we're not in compliance and because the EPA hasn't reviewed within 24 months of submission our waiver request. So I'd very much appreciate it if you would engage the EPA and ask them to review our waiver request, make whatever comments they need to, but get us that $4.5 billion in highway maintenance funds, lest we lose them permanently and have even further problems. I want to talk a little bit about the California bullet train. That goes through my district. That's cutting up my farms, that's cutting up my district's highways, that's giant concrete platforms raised way above our rail, way above our freeways, disconnected from each other, sitting there like large, useless monoliths. I appreciate other folks in the room here talk about high-speed rail and their desire for it in their communities. Our high-speed rails goes from Merced in my district of about 90,000 people, if we stretch a bit, the city of Merced, down to Bakersfield, when finished, which is about 400,000 people. Travels through the city of Fresno, the largest city in that corridor, at 500,000 people. There are no current engineering plans for the high-speed rail, the California High-Speed Rail Project, to go over the Tehachapi's to reach Los Angeles. There are no current engineering or budget plans for the high-speed rail to go over the coastal range to get to Silicon Valley or San Francisco. This, Mr. Secretary, is a useless project, and it's in the way of us widening our highways. We are a very significant transportation corridor between San Francisco and LA, up and down the West Coast. Both Highway 5 and Highway 99 go through our area. You can see major warehouse construction from all types of firms happening in my district. So please look at the California High-Speed Rail with some suspicion. I would add to an Inspector General's report that you may request. Please do a carbon study and look at the construction cost, the construction resources, the curing of the concrete, the steel, the energy it would take to run the rail, and calculate for yourselves by your own standards what passenger ridership would this rail system need as opposed to automobile travel to ever offset the carbon impacts of its construction and operation alone. And I'd suggest that this high-speed rail project is not anywhere near even carbon neutral. It is in fact a net carbon contributor to our atmosphere. So thank you for listening to that. I know I'm not giving you much time here. I'll ask you one thing. Does it trouble you that the federal government is giving subsidies to electric vehicles produced, through broad media outlet reports by slave labor around the world? Whether it's the mining in Congo or it's the factories in China, we're subsidizing electric vehicles produced with slave labor, and I'd like to put a stop to that. I'll let you have the last comment.
Well, thanks. On the first piece, welcome the opportunity to engage EPA and see how we can be helpful there. On the second, I haven't seen the latest computations of a carbon inventory, but take the point that that would be an important exercise. And on the third, look, we want to make sure that there is a made in America EV industry, and would love nothing more than to see domestic sourcing on everything that we need. Battery chemistry hasn't completely stabilized yet. I think EVs 10 or 20 years from now may look a little different than they do today.
Gentleman's time has expired.
We're certainly investing on more domestic production.
Chair now
Thank you, Mr.
recognizes